The council meeting of June 18th, 2024 is called to order. If anyone attending the meeting here in the council chambers would like to borrow amplifying headphones, please let us know. Y'all can hear me, great. Let's do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Donna, will you please do roll call?
Yes, I will. Councilmember Blush.
Here.
Councilmember Stearns.
Here.
Councilmember Gilmore.
Here.
Mayor Inesco is absent this evening. Deputy Mayor Sherman.
Here.
Councilmember Sapp.
Here.
And Councilmember Gutierrez.
Here.
Can I get a motion to excuse the mayor and Inesco?
I motion we excuse Mayor in the scope of tonight's meeting.
Second. Second. Does council have any late changes to the agenda? Right, and do any council members have any board reports to share? Hiding bunch was back. And are we ready for reading of the consent agenda? I'll take that as a yes. Donna, will you please read the consent agenda?
I will. Voucher number 110838 in the total amount of $1,000. Vouchers numbered 110839 through 110874 and EFT payments, payment numbers 396 through 409 in the total amount of $107,933.17. Payroll warrants numbered 3984 through 3987 and 12631 through 12735. Warrants 110875 through 110894 in the amount of $536,676.30. Resolution number 1335-0524, MBR Headworks Upgrade / Expansion Grant Acceptance, and minutes for the business meeting of May 7th, 2024, and special meeting of May 14th, 2024.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
Deputy Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Second. Great, thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as read. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? We're good? Great. Motion carries. Now we're on to D, general public comment. Cruise right along. At this time, members of the public are invited to make a public comment on any city-related topic. Donna, do we have anyone signed up to make a general public comment?
Yes, we do. We have Susan Kirchhoff.
Hi, council members, city officials, and those that are listening. Hey, I'm Susan Kirchhoff. I run the Youth Connection. I am here just to give a quick update and thank you to those that did attend our provider party with a purpose. It was amazing. We had 65 individuals who all work as homeless response systems and concerned citizens who wanted to see a difference in the things that we've done. I will say that I didn't get the full numbers and I didn't type up what I normally say. I wrote it out. We had at least 20 organizations represented, all working on our homeless system. And the consent is we all want to see something change. The Youth Connection, and I will say myself, I was voluntold, is actively wanting to see something change. The challenge is how do we work at that and how do we make it work? So we have made a commitment at the Youth Connection to really do something different. We are taking the information that we gleaned from everyone. We're going to make a asset mapping resource. We're going to combine it with the resources that are already in place through the Mason County Health Department and put that out out for everyone. We are challenging the people that came to actually do more than just a weekly or monthly meeting. We want them to meet weekly, and we want to change how we're doing our outreach. And I want to just challenge you to really think of our homeless population as not a problem, but they are humans that we need to figure out a solution to humanize them, not dehumanize them. Holistically, we as the homeless response tax system really want to see change. The bottom line is we do not have enough affordable housing, and we have to figure that out. The Youth Connection is wanting to be part of the solution as we continue to adopt 2 parks. We work through the summer. This summer, we've adopted the Teresa Johnson Trail and we adopted the skate park. We did get permission last year, and I think we're going to ask and confirm that that permission is still allowed for us to go in and paint that skate park. We've kind of taken it on. I'm not taking a total commitment, but it needs some help. And we're going to see what we can do to try to get that be a viable space that's safe. We also got approved through the Mason County last thing that they just did. We are going to be hiring what's called a Mason County liaison position, that the intent is they're going to liaison with all the community partners and try to figure out how we can make this a better solution. So I just want to encourage you guys, if you hear more on the Provider Party with a Purpose and where we're going with this, that if you have the opportunity to attend, to please come and attend. Thank you.
That's all we have, Deputy Mayor.
Alright. So next on the agenda is a presentation from Finance.
On Zoom.
There's no one on Zoom.
Sorry, Mayor.
Dean Jewett, lifelong Mason County member. I want to talk about ordinances. I watched a study session and we talked about shopping carts. Y'all know that that's been one of my top 3 pet peeves for quite a while. So I was glad to see a study session on it. One thing that came out that was really glaring and kind of ironic is that our mayor, who's not here, had made a statement about the ordinances. And all we had to do was pass an ordinance and everybody would have to comply. Can you believe that? An ordinance that everybody has to comply with. We already have several of those, and those ordinances are just kind of thrown to the wind and willy-nilly. So I'm just kind of curious as how we're gonna make somebody comply with an ordinance if we don't already do it. We're gonna be breaking some camps apart, and there we have an influx of street people, and I'm not gonna call them homeless because I call them street people. There's a difference between the 2 entities. A lot of the homeless people, they seek out the resources. We need to assist them. The 30% of people that are in trouble over and over and over and over again, they either need to comply or move. Two choices. So we've also had an influx of RVs. And we have, imagine that, we have a no street camping ordinance, but I guess we're just going to get them to comply with that. I'm going to beat that dead horse. We had 3 up by McDonald's before they were finally gone. We've got one that sits down on 2nd Street, a van with an old little hydroplane on top of it all the time. It's everywhere. It's all the time. The blue van. We got camping at the Bank of America, the pump station, the BPA up by McDonald's, the Safeway campgrounds, the Brewer Park campgrounds. Brewer Park is already heading back into that real negative like we had last time. I would like to have somebody here make a motion and really force the fact that we need to get proactive instead of complaint-based action on it. I know I've had several conversations with the police chief, and I really appreciate what the police do in their efforts, but we need more. We've been talking about this problem for 5 years. How much longer do we have to talk about it before we actually make some Olympic-sized steps, not baby steps? I'm talking big old Carl Lewis long jump steps. That's what we need. I also want to reach out and thank Donna. I did a public request act and she was stellar at getting that. I know it's probably a tough job. Thank you, Donna. I appreciate it. I was also at Susan's meeting. I've been to a couple of these meetings lately, and what she says is very true. We have a consortium and of individuals, and all we do is talk at those meetings. Something needs to change You guys are the culture of our community. Thank you.
All right. So next on the agenda is a presentation from Finance Director Mike Gibbons.
Thank you,
Yep.
Deputy Mayor and council members. I have the April 2024 financial report to share some highlights with you on. At the top of the page here on page 1, where you'll see our estimate through 2024. And one of the things I wanted to point out that's, I think, a little bit strikingly different this year, we have we're estimating our revenue to exceed our expenditures by almost $250,000. One of the reasons our revenue's up a bit is there's some unanticipated revenue. We've had some money come in from the opioid settlement that we're a part of. We've had some other grant monies that have come in a little bit more than we had budgeted for or had budgeted at all for. So that's part of it. But I think that's a positive for our planning into 2025. One of the things I'll mention probably more than you want to hear is we're really entering into budget season, if you will, right now, and planning that 2025 budget that we'll present to you in a couple of months. Well, I'm going to give myself more slack than that. In 3 or 4 months, we'll present that to you, and the finance committee will be meeting with us to go over some parts of that. As we look into the future of budgets, though, revenue doesn't keep pace with expenditures. In particular, we're focused on the general fund here. So this year's pattern is a positive for the general fund. And I think we've come a long ways from where you might remember we were a year ago in making the correction, which was actually a year ago this month. So it's our planning and I think good stewardship is paying off. Towards the middle of page 1, I just wanted to spend a minute on our estimate for the ending fund balance. We're detailing the 20% reserved amount that we back out from that amount, so you and our citizens can see that we're taking that into account. The city manager and leadership will be formulating a plan to present to you as council as part of the 2025 budget process on ways to invest that unreserved amount in ways that address council strategic goals and some of our deferred maintenance. So that's our estimate, I think, is pretty accurate right now at where that is at just about $2.5 million. But we have a long list of needs that will quickly compete for that amount of money. But I think it's showing that we're doing a good job in managing our resources. I'm going to move to page 2. And just tell you a moment about our revenue in the general fund. Again, I mentioned it's above where we're estimating. One of the lines that's been a change this year is that business and occupation tax. That council voted to increase that. We've done a lot of communicating with our businesses. It's been a little bit of a delay in some of our larger retail businesses catching up with that. Their corporate offices are far away. They haven't caught up with the form changes. We've done some communicating, finally via phone call. We just got one payment that came in for that back amount. They were remitting the 1% rather than the 2%. And so our estimate on this is showing that we were thinking we'd be down about 3%. I think it's going to be closer to budget now that we're realizing some of that. And I'm not trying to call them out specifically. I know it's easy to assume who it is. Those changes happen kind of slowly in those big corporations. And so we're getting that worked out. But otherwise in the budget, on that revenue side of things, I think you'll see things are really pretty darn positive. Nothing's looking particularly down. And I think that speaks well for our planning into 2025. I use this right now quite a bit to make some estimates into 2025 and kind of make some recommendations to Mark as city manager, and as leadership, we can take a look at this. Of course, our fee schedule definitely folds into this revenue at a certain place, so that's and where we're at with that. On page 3, we have the general fund expenditures by department. This again, you know, we're through April, so that's a good amount of time to start to kind of gauge things. On the right-hand side, if it's a positive number, it's favorable. If it's negative, we're estimating at this point it will be over budget. Some of the over budget is quite frankly due to things out of anyone's control. It was our liability insurance that went up. Other things are just a bigger demand to provide the service. But at the end of it all, we're still looking at being about 1% favorable on the general fund budget. And some of that, quite frankly, is due to some unfilled staff positions. And so that's not necessarily a positive thing for us to get the work done, but that's where the general fund is as of end of April. The leadership will be using kind of a mid-year estimate as we formulate the budget, really going into the next month so that we can use directors and other cost center managers information about their own budgets to kind of predict where they think they'll end up, because they know better than we can estimate in finance that maybe a project's not going to happen that they budgeted for, or if they're running a little bit over budget on something. So that'll come into play as we work on the 2025 budget. And then I'll skip up to page 7, where I wanted to point out that I always tell you, look at the fund balance, and if everything's positive, that's a good thing. And you'll notice there's a big negative, and that's a mistake on our part. On the sewer capital fund, we backed out the revenue on a project that's not happening, but we didn't back out the expenditure. So I can assure you that will be not ending in a $1.6 million negative. We just need to correct that, and I didn't catch it before it went to press. So that is not going to be a negative. So I wanted to point that out, since I always say, as long as they're positive, everything's good. That's not good. Under citywide FTE, we made some strides in filling some positions. Our overall vacancy rate went down 2 since March, when you saw this last report. We filled 1 position in street operating and 1 in storm. So I think that's good news. We'll continue to update you on this. We lag a little bit, so there's been some hiring strides, I think, even in the last 6 weeks that we're not showing because of maybe what's happening, but I think that's good news. Sometimes it changes, there's resignations, so that's always a little bit fluid, but that definitely leads to some of the savings across some of our funds.
PD is one of the specific departments that has had
Phil.
two hires since this April report.
So as we move through the month of June, we're going to be feverishly working on budget. Next week, we have a leadership retreat with other managers who work on budget to really kind of dig into this. I'm gonna give a estimate on, in particular, the general funds revenue, so that really everybody understands where those sources come from and what we're looking at over not only 2025, but Mark's asked that we kind of take a peek out so that we're planning well and don't get ourselves caught in a position where it might look, okay, we can make it through 2025, but if we add that position, for instance, could it be sustained? So there'll be a lot of planning going on really pretty intensely for the next 9 or 10 weeks as we get ready then for finance to put things together so it can be published and our community and you all can have a chance to give thought to the 2025 budget. It's always odd to be talking about this when we're only halfway through the year, but that's the way it is. So that's the all my comments on the April financial report. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Happy to answer any questions you may have, council, on the report.
We have another item from Mike, a resolution for a managed service agreement.
Yes, thank you. So this is an agreement with a managed service provider, Right Systems Incorporated. This is a company the city has used since 2020. And so it's my first time presenting it to you. As you know, information technology, as we reorganized last fall, came under finance. So this has been a learning curve for me. Our managed service provider is really providing the additional IT support in a tiered manner to the city. They're available to cover our needs 24/7 for our operations. So we have 1 employee in IT. Our needs are really vast in the city. What Right Systems provides is subject matter experts in the areas of data center, networking, and security. So every space of IT and resources that it provides to the city, I would say is a good value when you take into consideration what it would cost to employ the additional staff we need to cover that expertise. And I think that's the one thing that until I was more involved with IT, I didn't fully understand, because it looks like an area where, gosh, let's cut some of that. Do we really need it? I can assure you we do. They specialize in the content that our on-site staff aren't experienced in, and really would be difficult to find one person who could do the wide breadth of IT that are required for a city as complex as ours. They have experience with other agencies as well. This particular company, Right Systems, serves several other municipalities, and that benefits us because this idea of threats and vulnerabilities of hackers that is out there is constant, and the technology is changing, and they are very much on top of that. And in addition, they have a good read on what's new and what's going out. You know, there's lots of things that from the finance side of me, I'd like to say, well, let's just hang on to it forever. But unfortunately, it has an end of life in IT terms that you have to replace it or it's not going to communicate with our system. So IT is such an ever-changing environment. We need that up-to-date support that the managed service provider affords us. They're specialists in something that is a trade name, and it's called our Nutanix cluster, and it's our virtualization server. And we host it on site to really virtualize, if you will, all our servers, such as our domain controllers. They control the resources of our network access, the permissions, the accounts, the servers, our file servers, our print servers. It allows us to better allocate resources, both physically and logical resources, so more control over our infrastructure. And that's just one example of where we need that kind of expertise to be able to provide the IT that's needed in our complex city. They also provide our server licenses, so we buy those through them for Microsoft and those kinds of licenses that we use. A big service that they provide to us, I'm going to tell you, is security in the Microsoft 365 space, including identity access and management. Identity access is your identity as far as Microsoft is concerned, multi-factor authentication when we have people log into their computers. About 6 weeks ago, we had an employee receive an email and it looked like an invoice. And so they clicked on it and it took them out to a website. It looked completely legitimate. It was the company's logo. It was their invoice. And it asked the employee to enter their credentials. Unfortunately, the employee did that, which then opened up a threat to our system. Fortunately, we have all of these things in place so that Right Systems was immediately notified. They got a hold of our city IT person. We were able to shut it down. and thwart the threat. It brought the person who did that offline briefly, but it didn't compromise the city's system. And when you think about the city system, it's our public safety, our police, not to mention our court. We have MACECOM in the building. We also, believe it or not, a lot of threats right now that they're targeting are wastewater treatment plants. And so we really, not to mention our water facilities and even our finance, because that's, we're paying through electronic funds transfers, et cetera. So we want to make sure that's safe, and they help us do that. I think that it's, again, I'd love to be able to say, well, we can do it without this contract, but it would cost us more, I'm afraid, if we tried to employ the people. One of the other things that Right Systems does, we have, as I mentioned, one employee. We've had times when we've had turnover in that position, or the person's out on some leave. Right Systems is able to step in then and provide us the support. As I mentioned, they provide 24/7 support, so that if a police officer for some reason is locked out of their their patrol car computer at 9 a.m. on a Sunday, when we don't have a staff person here, Right Systems can provide that response. We also have, of course, public works staff who work on the weekends, and so they can provide that support that otherwise we'd have to be employing people with. So we're undergoing right now, we just finished an RFP on a risk assessment. As you might recall, we have a grant to perform a cybersecurity risk assessment. So we're excited to get that going. And then we would also work in partnership with Right Systems on recommendations that assessment makes. And I'm looking forward to getting that assessment's recommendations to really make sure we're in line with our cybersecurity. That is another thing I've had a steep learning curve on. That's really one of the biggest, I think, threats or maybe challenges we face in IT today, is making sure that we're constantly in front of that to make sure that we're not shut down. There's been some examples recently of public agencies in our state that have had this happen, and it just shuts your whole system down. You can't pay utility bills, you can't pay other bills. So we want to avoid that. And I'm confident bringing you this contract renewal is where we need to be going into the future. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have or get you more information if you would like. Thank you.
All right. So do we have a motion?
Deputy Mayor, I move to place resolution number 1337-0624 on the action agenda for July 2nd, 2024 council meeting for further consideration.
Second. All right, all in favor, oh wait, sorry, we have a motion and a second to place resolution number 1337-0624 on the action agenda for July 2nd, 2024 council meeting for further consideration. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Awesome. The only thing that would be better is if they could also do records requests for us.
For that price, yes.
Right? Wouldn't that be great?
Price.
I would be okay with that. Right? Yeah, okay. So moving on, action agenda. Actually, we don't have any action agenda tonight. So guess we can move on to the city manager's
Great.
report.
Just a couple things for you tonight, council. I want to give you an update on Post Office Park. We received a draft lease agreement from USPS last week. I'm currently making edits, reaching out to some of our partners we worked with in the past for Post Office Park. And then we'll be forwarding it to our attorney for review. After that, I hope to do that in the next day or two. And then we'll ship back our response to them and see how it goes. Initially, they're seeking a 20-year lease with a 30-day termination clause. I'm certainly interested in extending that termination period, particularly around the holiday season. They're asking to essentially keep the funds that were expended so far in the parcel swap project. So it's $10,000 that were contributed to USPS for their services, and just over $20,000 that we can spent on engineering services for survey work and appraisal work. So I think we have the ability to maybe seek some of those funds to be reimbursed back to the city. By all means, it doesn't hurt to ask. There's a couple liabilities we believe that are existing in the park, including a dead tree that we'd like to have taken care of before city took over that lease, and some other cleanup wording issues. It's really geared around a facility and a building, which is interesting. I think that's what they lease most of the time rather than a park property. So we've got some edits to do there. They are asking for dedication of 20 parking stalls that were dedicated back in 1997 for post office use. 13 on Franklin Street and 6 on Second Street in lieu of the lease as well as the fund. So we have the signage. We certainly can move forward with that, but that'll ultimately be a council decision. So I hope to have, I'd imagine it's gonna be a couple more weeks at a minimum. By the time it gets back to Washington DC, they run it through whatever process they need to run through. We might have a couple iterations or communications back and forth before we feel comfortable bringing something to council. So I'll continue to keep you up to date as we move forward through that process.
A little bit like ping pong back and.
Yeah.
Yeah, but hey, good news. We still have our Christmas tree lighting location,
That's right.
so it's all good.
Yeah.
Right.
The last thing I have for you tonight, just a reminder that city offices are closed tomorrow on recognition of the Juneteenth holiday. So we'll be back here on Thursday, business as usual.
Does the council have any new items for discussion? Pretty happy about Post Office Park. Yeah. Big topic on everybody's mind, so yay.
Yeah.
All right, so our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, July 2nd, 2024 at 6 p.m. We also have a study session on June 25th at 6 p.m. This meeting is adjourned at 31. Right? I did it.
That's it. Once the gavel hits, that's it.